While South Africa has got a new president, Ethiopia has lost its prime minister. Haile Mariam Desalegn has said he will step down, saying that his move was an essential part of the reforms required to restore peace in Ethiopia. Mr. Haile Mariam became prime minister in 2012, but much of his time in power has been dogged by protests, especially in the Oromia region, including one at a religious festival in 2016 when more than 50 people died. The Prime Minister addressed the nation earlier today.
The reasons why I have decided to offer to resign are to ensure sustainable peace and democracy in our country. It's important for me to be part of the solution. The party has welcomed my decision to resign, and I believe the Ethiopian parliament will accept my resignation.
Now our correspondent Emmanuel Igunza joins us live from Addis Ababa. Emmanuel, this seems to have come out of the blue.
Yes, indeed. It was quite a surprise, especially with the timing. This is a prime minister who still had more than 2 years to go with his term. But remember, the signs have always been there. He's been facing more than 3 years of protests, which have turned very violent in some parts of Oromia, which is the largest in the country. And also, this has constantly spread to other regions in Ethiopia, and people are complaining about political and economic marginalization. They want wider democratic rights, and so the signs were there. Even looking at inside his own the ruling coalition, there were wrangles which show that he was a man not in control, and so the resignation, yes, the timing was a surprise, but the signs had been there.
What has been the reaction there?
Well, many opposition figures have been speaking about his resignation, and they say it is a welcome move, but they want to see more changes within the hierarchy of the ruling coalition. They say his resignation does not go further enough, deep enough to address some of the reforms they've been calling for. Remember, the Ethiopian parliament has no representation from the opposition, and this is what the opposition are saying, that they want changes. They want to see the government starting a process of national reconciliation. If you talk to the common people, there is a bit of confusion, a bit of anxiety. People do not know what exactly the future holds for them, and so it is a wait and see game for many people, trying to see who the next prime minister of Ethiopia will be.
Emmanuel, the ruling coalition held emergency meeting today. Do we know what came out of it?
Well, the latest reports that we've had is that the ruling coalition has indeed accepted the resignation of the Prime Minister who tendered his resignation earlier today. We expect that he will then have to go through Parliament. Remember, it's Parliament which has to approve the resignation for them again to be able to start the process of choosing a new leader. So in the next few days, we'll be knowing what the type of candidates who will be bringing themselves up for the nomination for the position of the Prime Minister, and who will lead this country, trying to resolve these issues that have now threatened the unity of the country.
As always, Emmanuel Igunza there for us live in Addis. Well, joining me now is a law lecturer and political analyst on Ethiopia, Awol Alo. Many thanks for joining us. Will the resignation make any difference to the protests that we've seen in Ethiopia recently?
Well, the resignation of the Prime Minister in of itself doesn't really make a significant difference on the ground. But if you look at his resignation in terms of the broader change sweeping the political landscape in Ethiopia, it might make some difference. So I'm saying this very cautiously because it really depends on what happens next. But the resignation of the Prime Minister in of itself is not a significant change.
Well, in your opinion, why did the Prime Minister resign?
Well, what forces the Prime Minister to resign is the same really pressure by young people who have been protesting the last 3 years. The same protest movement that forces the government to declare a state of emergency, the same protest movement that forces the government to release political prisoners, and now forcing the Prime Minister to resign. So the government had no option really other than finding some way of responding to the demands of the people. But the question really is whether they are prepared to go far enough in terms of undertaking the kind of radical change that needs to be undertaken in terms of responding to the actual demands of the people.
We understand that there are internal political battles within the ruling coalition. What will be their next steps, do you think?
And I think one of the most significant outcomes of the protest of the last 3 years is reconfiguring the relationship between the ruling party itself. So the Oromo People Democratic Organization that theoretically represents the Oromo people within the coalition didn't really have power that is commensurate with the size of the population that it represented. The same thing for the party that represented the Amhara people, which is the second largest group after the Oromo. Now, as a result of these protests, as a result of this relentless activism, these parties have begun to assert themselves and actually demanding that they be given power that is commensurate with their constituency, both within the ruling party and also within the government. So the resignation of the prime minister in some ways is a way of responding to those demands. The key question is whether these individuals who would be taking power within central government and within the party will be people who are of the establishment or those who would be supported by the people.
Many thanks, Awol Allo. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much.